And then we can go at the end of this, we can go ahead and talk about um like which teams and just get that settled
Yeah.
already. That way we can
Okay.
um
Yeah. And then we can talk about around the NFL podcast.
yeah, dude, what the fuck?
I took a lease out on your heart. I took a lease out on your heart. Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun?
Welcome back, everybody. We are Rough Draft Research. You are the audience, and together we are on a quest for Dynasty Domination. How's it going over there, Daniel?
Oh, it's going well, man. Pretty excited. Daytime potting today. The
Yeah,
sun is out.
pretty crazy.
It's kind of cool. Yeah, we got bright rooms where normally I'm in a darkish basement. So different kind of energy, man.
It is a
Pretty
different
exciting
energy.
though.
We'll see
How are
how
you
it
doing,
goes.
Christian?
I'm good, man. It's random off day for me in the middle of the week,
Hey,
or I guess end of the week still, but yeah, it's nice. And we'll see if we'll see how the daytime energy flows for us, and we'll see if we need to
right.
keep wrapping these in or bringing these into the schedule.
Hell yeah.
But if you've been listening, you will know, and if you haven't, I will tell you that we are continuing our divisional skill position breakdown. So we have covered the AFC and NFC Souths, and we have also covered the AFC West. So we are going to hit you with the NFC West today. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started off, and we are going to start off with the Seattle Seahawks. So interesting team. Obviously, Pete Carroll was there for a really long time, and now he is not. They bring in Mike McDonald. Right?
Hmm.
Yep. Sorry. I just want to make sure I said that right. There's Mike McDaniels, Mike McDonald. I don't want to get them all confused. But so they bring in
Sure.
him, defensive coordinator from the Ravens. So that should change their team. They also trade for Sam Howell, so I'm going to start there. Is there any possibility that Sam Howell overtakes Geno Smith this year? It seems to be a thing that people are talking about. I don't know. The kid was a gunslinger last year. It didn't translate to wins, but he certainly moved the ball. He had a ton of yardage. Um, I would have to go back and look, but I imagine a lot of that was garbage time yardage. And then if you look at their passing grades from PFF, Geno Smith had an 82.1 and Sam Howell had a 57.6. So it doesn't seem like they're very close there. But if you do look at their attempts, Geno Smith had 499 to Sam Howell's 612. I mean, they
Huh.
didn't trade for him for no reason. He wasn't expensive, obviously, but I do think it's worth keeping an eye on. Just like maybe it is a new coaching staff, it is completely new. It's even a new GM, I believe. I could be wrong about that part, but so yeah, that's gonna be interesting. But the most interesting room to me is gonna be the wide receiver room. A lot of people are concerned of Jaxon Smith-Njigba's uh, disappointing rookie season. I don't think it was all his doing. I think he made some big time plays throughout the season and kind of showed glimpses of what he has to offer and his skill set. But I think the former offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, kind of misused JSN. And just because, like, so of JSN's 90 targets, only 24 of them were more than 10 yards down the field, which just seems like a
What?
gross misuse of his talent. Like I get that he can, he's shifty and he can make people miss or whatever to a point, but like exclusively using him as like a gadget player doesn't seem right. And I do feel like them bringing in a new OC in Ryan Grubb should help them out. And if you don't know who that is, he well, just so happens to be the offensive coordinator of the 2023 national championship making Washington Huskies. So he likes to air it out, and that he knows how to take advantage of weapons. He had Romo Dunze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk up there, and they all were feasting. So like that to me speaks to JSN having kind of a rebound from his rookie season. So presumably he's going to work on more down the field routes instead of just the screen stuff, which is good. Even if he's in the slot all the time, that's fine. He just needs to push more downfield to be more effective, in my opinion. I do think we're finally going to see the Tyler Lockett phase out. Last year, he had his lowest yards, his lowest touchdowns, his lowest yards per reception, and his lowest fantasy points per game since 2018. He's almost 32 years old. I get that he's still like a viable player, and I think he will be, but with a first round pick in JSN sitting there, and then a brand new coaching staff and a brand new, like, kind of front office entirely, will maybe start to see Lockett become the third guy. And I could see Lockett's targets and JSN's targets switching, which, just for instance, Lockett had like 120 and JSN had 90. So I could see that flipping. I don't think it's going to be like a crazy, crazy thing. I still think DK Metcalf is the number one there for now. I do think JSN, if he kind of rebounds and has a really good season, will start to take more of that DK work as well. But expect a rebound. If you can buy JSN low on people that are kind of scared, I think I would do it. Um, Moving on to the tight end room, though, I think there's a chance for Noah Fant to do some like interesting stuff, not necessarily like game changing or roster altering stuff for you, but that weird three-headed monster between him, Will Dissly, and Colby Parkinson is gone and disbanded now. And Fant led that room in targets last season anyway with 43. And he's just clearly kind of the better receiving option. He hasn't really hit the ground running from what we wanted out of college, but he had 43 targets last season, and I could see that jumping to like 55 or 60 this season. I don't think that would be crazy, which could give you some cheap value on your bye weeks or through injuries. I do think for him to have a good game, he's going to be fairly touchdown dependent just for how many receiving options there are. And then you also have to calculate the running back room, which is where we're going to get into, because this is another interesting puzzle. Obviously, everybody scratched their head when Pete Carroll brought in Zach Charbonnet right after bringing in Kenneth Walker III. So are they going to continue to split time and hamper each other's value? Or does one kind of take the more lead role here with a new coaching staff? And I don't know. I think it's really hard. You had 219 attempts for Kenneth Walker last year to Charbonnet's 108. Charbonnet had a slight edge in targets, 40 to 37, but that's a negligible difference. And Walker had more yards and actually had a touchdown anyway. So, I mean, yeah, he had more targets, but he was less effective. And in terms of their rushing efficiency, you can't really separate them that much either. They're fairly close on all their stuff in terms of efficiency numbers, yards per carry, stuff like that. My gut says the new regime comes in and just rides Walker in the rushing game. He's already done it. He's had 1,000 yard season already. He had 900 yards last year. I do think there's like an opportunity for Charbonnet to catch more passes. And maybe they separate these two into a truly like 1 and 2 down Kenneth Walker and a third down Charbonnet, instead of just swapping them out drive for drive, seemingly. I think that could help their value, but I still think Walker is at least the guy for one more season, and then maybe they toy with the idea of trading him on the last year of his rookie deal or whatever with Charbonnet there, depending on how the season goes. But yeah, so I think Walker's the guy there. Fant has some interesting, maybe weekly upside, and then JSN is due for a bounce back. But other than that, I kind of see it going pretty similarly to last year. Other than I think they're going to air it out more.
Yeah, hopefully they air it out more. But I mean, like you're saying, these wide receivers were already pretty close, with the three of them being within 90 and 120. If it all evens out and they all get, 110, or JSN and Lockett flip, like you're saying, it's fairly, I feel like this team, obviously new coaching staff and everything, it's fairly set up to be, the same thing it was last year. There's no new action unless Sam Howell does somehow take that role on, which
Yeah.
I think would be wild. I think that'd be a lot. That'd be pretty entertaining. He was kicking ass last year there on the onset when he started catching on. So it's potentially what could be happening, especially with maybe Gino being like a Carroll guy, and
Hmm.
and now they're going to kick the tires on this, because I don't see this team I mean, it's pretty stable offensively, it feels like, but in this division, I don't know if they got what it takes
Mm.
to.
Mm.
So I think they might have some flexibility to see what else they can make happen. So that's all right. I mean, yeah, this is one of those. Yeah, coming off a 9-win season, it's
Mhm.
still third in the division. It's kind of rough, but we'll see. I think you're right about the Walker thing. Like he does feel like the guy they go with just because he's got those home runs.
Mhm.
Whereas as Charbonnet never really got an opportunity to get too deep on that. But I don't know. This whole division um feels like most of these teams it's just kind of more of the same to come. So
Mm.
um I don't know, one person's opinion, but now we get into San Francisco, if you
Yeah,
want to talk about more of the
things remain
same.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah, this team pretty wild. Last year they were crazy efficient. Like whatever Brock Purdy did, it was insane. He led the league in yards per attempt and completions. And then he had a 7% touchdown share. So his percentages, his efficiencies were just out of this world, and it
Mm.
was kind of wild because they were last in passing attempts, like dead last, yet in passing yards they were fourth in the
Jeez.
league. So like that's insane. It's
Mhm.
insane, and I'll get into like how it happened or what contributions were made by individuals to make it happen, but I mean it's yeah, it's not nothing to do the fewest pass attempts and be top five in the yards. That's incredible. I don't know if any other team could possibly do that. But then you look at the rushing, and they were eighth in rushing attempts and third in rushing yards. So that was an efficiency bump too, but it was
Mhm.
obviously what they were trying to do, and you can see that in how McCaffrey was deployed. But overall, they were just successful. They're third in scoring in the whole league. So um, the way this has just clicked with Brock Purdy under center is it doesn't feel like a fluke at all. It feels
Yeah.
fairly stable. He was the quarterback six last year. And I don't know for sure if I feel him like doing that, being, locked in, barking at the top five, year in and year out, but he does feel like a top 10 guy, if
Mhm.
they can maintain some of this efficiency. So I don't know how you feel about Purdy. I feel like it took me a long time to warm up to him, but now kind of just after the postseason run and really just looking into how Shanahan just the link between his mind and Purdy's play, it's seamless and it feels like they're doing exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
Um, so that is what it is, but it all comes down to the weapons. Like he has these amazing weapons at his disposal,
Mhm.
and Christian McCaffrey going in. He's 28 now, and obviously he was the RB1, um, and he's probably going to keep doing that if he was
Yeah.
asked to do the same things. I mean, yeah, he had 272 carries and 83 targets.
Mhm.
So like those are top numbers for the running back position. Um, and he was the touchdown leader, tied with Raheem Mozart with 21 touchdowns. So like,
Jeez.
across the whole league, all purpose. So if you're getting the most carries and the most passes and the most touchdowns, like you're gonna be
Pretty
electric. This
effective.
is, I mean, I don't know. It's like Christian McCaffrey, I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what you want from me, but like he beat out Derrick Henry by 300 yards to be the rushing leader on the year.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then all-purpose yards, he beat out CD Lamb by 150 yards to be the all-purpose yard leader. So when you got a running back out there just like burying these 1700
Mhm.
yard receivers in the all-purpose game,
Yeah.
it's insane. So 28, he's been relatively healthy, and I think maybe we'll see it continue. But I guess the real question is what happens behind him, because San Francisco, just year in and year out, is always churning,
Mm.
always trying to get another guy in place behind, Christian McCaffrey, and we've seen some highs and some lows. Actually, we haven't seen any highs. We've just seen lows when it comes from that backup. So between the Ty Davis Prices and the, Elijah Mitchells, and there's some Trey Sermon action, and who knows, and now we're thinking about like Isaac Grindo coming in next. Is he the guy? But it really, I mean, it doesn't matter um what they do, because Christian McCaffrey is not leaving any carries available to anybody else, really. So let's see, the quarterback in this offense last year, between Sam Darnold did get some rush attempts, but they got about 12% of the carries. And then McCaffrey was 55%, and then other running backs had 160 carries. So about a third of the carries went to other guys. So if you want to believe in a single guy, you might get some fantasy relevance out of that. But the way this offense is built, it's just going to be whoever. Elijah Mitchell is not staying on the field, not staying too
Mhm.
healthy. But the way this team is built, it's not about like the backup running back or CMC's handcuffs. You're kind of gonna miss out on that in a Shanahan offense. But it's all about the passing game. Honestly, I don't know exactly what's going on, right? With the Ayuk still up in the air.
Yeah.
He would like to get an extension. Debo's obviously making some good money, and then they've got a first round with the Ricky Parcell. It's like, what exactly are we getting into? I don't know. I dug into it a little bit, trying to figure out like how I felt about Ricky Parasol, and trying to read what the future could look like if they traded Debo or Ayuk or whichever, because I'm not quite sure they want to trade either. But when it comes to dollar amounts,
Hmm.
like they can't have that much money allocated to the wide receiver position for very
Hmm.
long. So but looking into Ricky Parasol, it's like the A dot going out of college was about 11 yards, and his yards after the catch per reception were 5.8 yards. So it's like neither, because Ayuk was getting massive A dot last year, and then Debo's the yak king of the world. So I couldn't really profile which one was which. So I'm just gonna pretend that all three of these guys are somehow gonna end up on the field all the time. But that's probably not the case either. But Debo's 2023 was pretty good. He had the wide receiver 15 year. And like I'm saying, he had the 8.8 yards after the catch per reception, which was the top wide receiver. So he's definitely living it up. The thing with Debo that gets me is this is five rushing touchdowns last year, 7.5% of the team carries. So we know he's contributing, and that taking carries away from those backups as well. And aside from one week, week 10, where he had a 30-yard game, he was only a wide receiver one finish in games that he had a rushing touchdown.
Mm.
So that rushing work is kind of tied to some of his fantasy upside. Um, so yeah, I don't know how I feel. He's missing some time here and there, and then his rushing work seems to be important. So I guess I don't view him as stable as of a fantasy asset as I once did, just because
Hmm.
between the health or the rushing work, if one of the two of those goes, he's kind of losing a lot of his value,
Hmm.
slipping back towards like the mid 20s on your wide receiver rankings. So I don't know. That's personally how I feel about Debo. And then Brandon Ayuk is just an unreal monster now. Like the A dot for him was 13.8, which was 13th amongst people with the 50 targets or more. And then his yards per reception were 17.9, which was second. So it's really just like the efficiency and everything we're saying about, Brock Purdy having this success. It really comes down to these guys, 18 yards per catch for him. Kittle had 15.7, and then Debo's just under 15 yards per catch. So these efficiency numbers make it to where you don't have to throw a ton of passes to get a ton of yards. So I just look for this offense to be a juggernaut. Then you got Juwan Jennings, got a 2-year extension, about 8 million a year. So there's always something going on with him. And I don't know what you want to say about George Kittle. He's just crazy. He's well, there we go. It's bound to happen. He's coming off the tight end 5 season. Um, and everything he does is just top end. The yards after the catch are out of control. He's up there with those other guys at 7.4. That's pretty solid yards after the catch. So everything they do is just elite. They're just going to get to the Super Bowl again, I guess. I don't know. You tell me.
Maybe. I mean, we'll see. They clearly wanted to address that third wide receiver spot, going after in the draft, and maybe that was a look to the future. But I do think people are maybe underrating the fact that maybe they didn't only want to target their third receiver 33 times like Juwan Jennings, and maybe they just didn't trust him. So maybe the point of spending a first round pick on Ricky Parasol is to get a viable third guy, which maybe levels out the Ayuk and Debo targets a little more. And I do think Ayuk is clearly the lead dog here. I mean, as long as he shows up, obviously we have all that weird contract stuff situation going on. But I think he's the guy to want to have in this offense in terms of consistent production. Because, like you're saying, if Debo doesn't get that rushing ability, his upside is really tanked. And how much longer is that going to last? And then going forward, there's no way they can pay Ayuk, Samuel, McCaffrey, Purdy, what he's going to have to get paid, and then potentially another Kittle contract. That might be a weird one, but who knows? But like you're saying, Kittle has a lot left in the tank. It seems like I kind of traded him thinking that he was on the downward spiral, and it doesn't seem like that. He was third, just to add another good stat for him. He was third in yards per route run for tight ends,
Mhm.
just behind Kelsey and a guy who we're going to get into later. And so yeah, I mean it's more of the same, but this Ricky Parasol slide has been interesting to me, just because of the offense he's in. Like I get maybe like we weren't necessarily two of the biggest Parasol guys coming out of the draft, but like Shanahan loves guys that can get open, and that is Parasol's thing. Like that's what he does. Like maybe he doesn't have the upside of some of these other receivers in terms of the athleticism and in terms of whatever, but you can't say the guy doesn't run clean routes and that he doesn't get open. And so in a Shanahan offense, which is already scheming people open, and if he can have that ability to do it and maybe play the slot role more, and then you could even have a situation where you have Debo lined up in the backfield more with Christian McCaffrey, then you have Parasol and Ayuk as your outside guys, and then you move them all around all over the place. That's going to be hell for defenses to try and keep up with. So I think it was about adding another third weapon there, and I like the move, and I'm excited to have a share Parasol to just see going forward, and maybe this season he's not like amazing for you, but I'm really intrigued on how it's going to go. But and then just touching real quick on Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to get into red zone touches when I talk about the Rams here in a second. But Christian McCaffrey led the league in red zone touches with 93, which is just an absurd amount, to be honest. And so, like, he's just on another level of fantasy value. And I do think he should be the number one overall pick in like a redraft, arguably. Like, I know wide receivers are the hot stuff right now, but like that advantage, like you're talking about, the yardage advantage that he had on running backs, and then even to dominate wide receivers like that is just crazy. And I don't see why it would change as San Francisco is in a Super Bowl window and they're trying to take advantage of it. So yeah, man. I hope they don't get it back because I don't particularly like them, and they always seem to do it by jumping on top of Green Bay. So fuck
Ah,
them, and I hope that doesn't happen. But I'm with you. They're one of the top seeds in the NFC, no doubt.
yeah. ridiculous. So as long as they don't win the Super Bowl, they can get there, I guess, and or maybe championship game, lose to
Yeah,
Green
that would
Bay.
be
All
nice
right,
if we could.
okay, I see where
Honestly,
you're
I
at.
don't even want to play them in the playoffs anymore. I'm sick of it because it's too much. Because when we lose to
Mm,
them, I get so pissed now because it's every year with this shit. So I'd rather just avoid them. I know that's a hot take. I know most Packers fans would probably want to like see us
keep
get
the
over the
energy,
hump,
yeah.
and I get that, and I would be excited if that happened. But honestly, I'd just rather avoid them. Let's just go somewhere else.
It's
Um,
nerve-wracking, dude. Watching the
yeah,
Chiefs play the San Francisco in the Super Bowl twice now, it's like it's not fun. It's
yeah,
not fun. Even if you win, it's like pretty painful to get
yeah.
there. So
Exactly.
anyway,
But anyway, leaving the Niners for now, we'll get into the Los Angeles Rams. And so, speaking of teams that didn't change too much, we're kind of poster child of the Rams here. They made a few moves here or there, um, but not a ton. So, we're going to get into this. The Rams, I do think, could be in some trouble if Stafford goes down. I'm still not like a big Stenson Bennett guy, and he is their backup right now. Um, I suppose he did win all those championships in college, so maybe I'm just undervaluing him. But let's just say that Matthew Stafford continues to be healthy, despite the age and despite the accumulation of injuries. So the obvious big question then becomes, well, who is the leader in the wide receiver room? Because we have these two supreme alpha dogs in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Obviously, this is a Dynasty podcast, and Puka is like the gem of gems going forward right now. Everyone wants a piece of him, and I kind of regret trading him away so early, and kind of bailing on that. If Drake London doesn't become the guy that I think he is, then I'm really going to be hurting there. But how does a healthy Cooper Kupp affect Puka Nacua's numbers? Because obviously Cooper Kupp wasn't healthy coming into last season, then he kind of went up and down with injuries. He's 31 years old this season. He's reportedly having an absolute fantastic camp. He was one of the surprises of camp, which is pretty crazy to say about a guy that was the Triple Crown winner for the wide receiver room 2 years ago. So like if that's what they're saying, obviously we're in the off season, so who knows what you have to believe. But through 12 games last season that Cup played, he had 95 targets, which is around 8 a game, which is around 135 pace on the year. In those same 12 games, Puka Nacua was on pace for 157. So that would say that you shouldn't be worried as a Puka Nacua owner, even if Cooper Kupp comes back. However, like I said, Cooper Kupp was dealing with injuries kind of all last year. He missed a game in the middle of the season, went out for a game. Like it seemed like he wasn't quite right. So I do think there is opportunity for Cooper Kupp to come back and really become the more dominant guy. But I still think they both hover around 140 and have spike week in terms of targets, 140 targets and have spike weeks. Um, because like they're just both too good and they both fit in this offense. And now essentially you have two Cooper Cups running around out there that the defense has to deal with because they play a similar style. I'm not saying they're the same person, obviously, but like he's even sitting in the meetings with Cooper and Matthew Stafford. They do similar things in terms of their route running and their ability to separate and their ability to catch the ball. So like now you have two of those guys, and I really do think they're both going to be like ace wide receivers for you. I see no reason why they wouldn't be top tier wide receiver ones for you both this season. Now going forward after Stafford's leave, that's an interesting conversation that we can get into. Who knows what's going to happen there? But as of this season, I don't see why they both wouldn't be incredible for you. Now, moving on to the rest of the team, I don't think there's really another receiving option to get excited about. I don't think anybody, including Tyler Higbee, is going to get over 70 targets. Higbee got 70 last year. Tutu Atwell was the third wide receiver with 67. And as long as Stafford is slinging it and we don't have to pivot to Stinson Bennett or something, I think that number stacks up because I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, he targeted Puka Nacua 20 times in a game last season. And he used to do that kind of stuff with Cooper Kupp all the time. So I don't know why they wouldn't just dominate the target share still. They didn't bring in another wide receiver really. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Tyler Johnson, and Jordan Washington is the rest of their depth chart at wide receiver. So I'm not worried about any of those guys stealing time. And then Higbee's just an aging tight end who's solid, and I just don't see him being much more than that at this point. Moving on to the running game, which is always hugely important for Sean McVay teams. I mean, they were 12th in attempts last year, 11th in yards, and 8th in touchdowns. So we know that he's going to want to do that again. That entire tree, the Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, all those guys, they love the running game. And Kyron Williams was a big part of that last season, coming off a fantastic season, 5 yards a carry, 1,100 total yards, 1,500 total TDs, 1,100 yards rushing, actually, and then 15 total TDs. However, Kyron Williams was hurt in the middle of last season. He was hurt his rookie season, only played 10 games, and now he's hurt to start training camp. Um, so that's a red flag to me in an offense and an offensive scheme that is perfectly comfortable running with the next running back available. And Williams, if you look at his numbers last season, he was crazy efficient and got a ton of red zone touches. And this is why I referenced Christian McCaffrey earlier. He was 93, he led the league. The top five, the other four guys were all hovering in the 70s, and that included Kyron Williams at 71. And then the rest of the guys, just so that you know, like how many more touches he was getting than these other guys. So the top five was all kind of in the 70s. The top five was a good 20 to 30 above the average of the rest of the pack, who most guys are getting like 40-ish red zone touches, if not less. A few guys got 50, but for the most part, it was in the 40s and sometimes 30s. So you're talking about a guy that's getting almost twice the red zone touches, and then and I just don't think that happens again. There's too many things that have to go right for that to happen again for Kyron Williams. First of all, his health. I already talked about it. That has to stay perfect. The Rams offense being that good again and not scoring more often with the passing game, which is crazy. I mean, you look at how many targets Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua were getting, but then Matthew Stafford only finished the season with like 25 touchdowns. So like you have to rely on them not scoring, and that's kind of hit or miss there. And then you have to worry about there not being stiff competition to steal some of those red zone touches away. Oh, hello, Blake Corum, third round pick and first offensive pick of the NFL draft for the LA Rams, whose specialty is working in the red zone, scoring a bunch of touchdowns in college over the past 2 seasons. Like, I'm on the record as saying I don't really like Blake Corum and his long-term fantasy viability, and I still don't. But for the next year or two, I'm in, absolutely. And I think the fact that they addressed Corum with their first offensive pick, they went Jared Verse and then uh oh no, Brandon Fisk in the second
Mhm.
round, and then they went back with Corum. I think that clearly shows you that they did not feel strongly about anything behind Kyron Williams. And now I put Corum and Kyron Williams kind of in the same area in terms of what they do. So I could see them absolutely swapping in and out a lot more than Kyron Williams is getting pulled last season. And I could see his numbers falling from 71 red zone touches to around the 40s, like these other guys, and then Blake Corum also having between 30 and 40 to make it more of a dynamic rushing attack, which is going to tank Kyron Williams' value. So, in my opinion, especially at his current ADP value, I am uninterested in Kyron Williams, and I would much rather have Blake Corum in redrafts. And if you're in a dynasty league and you think you're competing, I think Blake Corum could be a decent piece for your depth this year and next year. So yeah, I kind of set that up. I'm just gonna end right there and tell me or ask you what you think, I guess, because that's kind of how I feel about the Rams.
Yeah, pretty bulletproof. Honestly, like you're saying, yeah, it's is 50 red zone carries for Kyron and 11 red zone touchdowns, and you throw Corum in there and you
Mhm.
can pretty well guess that that's going to be affected in a big way. Everything you said is solid. I think that with two Cooper Cups on the field, there's room for Demarcus Robinson
Mm,
to get in there. I think that I like him. I think I've got him rostered somewhere. Just it
just to
feels
see.
weird. But yeah, I mean, from weeks 13 to through 17, He had four top 20
Mm,
wide receiver showings. Um, and so I think he has got a lot of potential. The targets were up and down. It was really just like red zone touchdowns and such. And I feel like if you have two juggernauts, there is room for another guy to have some success. And you're not really, in my opinion, they're not really running a squad that begs for 12 personnel. So there are going to be a lot of three wide receiver sets. And so just as a flyer, like potential, especially if there's any injuries to the top guys, I like Demarcus Robinson, dude. Call me
okay.
crazy.
That's fair.
It,
No,
you
I mean, it
know,
makes sense.
yeah, it's he's got a history with me, so I like him still. But okay, well, you want me to talk about the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, let's wrap this
Arguably
division up.
the most exciting
Yeah.
squad as
Hmm.
far as offseason mojo goes. Um, yes, everything we already know, right? Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in here, fourth overall pick, first first non quarterback in the draft coming in. And then they've got, Trey Benson, second running back in the draft coming in. It's a lot of new Desmond Ritter's on this team now. I mean, a lot of people are getting their Arizona Ritter jerseys out. I know I am personally. Now, here's the deal. Kyler, you missed some time. He came back and he was a quarterback 27, and it was pretty impressive to miss that much time and be the quarterback 27. He actually had the per game quarterback 14
Hmm.
season. And I thought it was a pretty good year. I thought it was a pretty good comeback. But this team, it wasn't really about what Kyler was doing, or Josh Dobbs, who had a pretty good showing
Yeah. Yeah.
while Kyler was out. But this team had the 13th most rush attempts, but the fourth most rushing yards, whereas the passing was 24th and 26th. So it wasn't really that impressive in the passing world, which, having two quarterbacks throughout can do that, especially with the wide receiver core they were rolling out last year. It's pretty stanky, but
Hmm.
on the ground, it happened. Our dude, my dude, the dude, James Conner, 29-year-old James Juggernaut Conner
Mm.
came in and he had himself a running back 18 season, missing time, of course, as he does. But yeah, a career high um, on yards per carry. He surpassed 1,000 yards for the first time ever. Only played 13 games, which is kind of like his standard season these days, which is whatever.
Hmm.
But it makes sense for them to bring in Benson. But I mean, Connor was doing great at the 5 yards per carry, and I don't know. His time miss was like in the middle of the season, but from weeks 5 to 9 he came back and it was pretty awesome, man. He had 4 out of 5 weeks were top five to end the year after week 12. So he hit the ground running strong. Some of his best work was at the tail end. I feel like he wants to keep that success going. So obviously Benson comes in and has the potential to take a huge chunk of the workload, especially
Hmm.
if he goes down. Like that's the thing that worries me. If James Conner comes out and he's fine and it's all good, and he gets injured at the end of the year, that's fine. But last year he missed weeks 5 through 9. So if he misses time that early this season, Benson's going to come in and just start. He's going to be the guy, and it's going to be over for Connor. So I really need Connor just to stay strong, stay strong. Um, but really, he still had 45% of the team's carries, only playing 13 games. So they're really loading up on him. Kyler, as a runner, I think we could see that really take off and get back where it needs to be. But really, this team has so much potential to be different than it has been in the past few years, just because you have Marvin Harrison Jr. on
Hmm.
the squad. They're kind of shedding some dead weight, in my opinion. We got Hollywood Brown and Rondell Moore and Zach
Hmm.
Ertz are all off of this team, and they were kind of confusing people on the squad. Then they represent over 200 targets available
Hmm.
for a guy like Marvin Harrison to come in and take a 150 chunk and run with it or whatever they want to do. But then you also have Michael Wilson, who was a wide receiver 60. I know I'm excited about him. I know a lot of people are. He doesn't really have any ironclad stats that jumped out
Hmm.
as a rookie, but just to be in this weird offense and have enough success, I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver too in this offense. And with the defense is worried about the run game and Marvin Harrison Jr., I think Michael Wilson's going to be pretty solid. Zay Jones also comes in.
Hmm.
He didn't have a great 2023, but he's got potential to be a viable fantasy guy. I guess he's on like his 20th team already. Zay Jones blows my mind. I remember being
Yeah,
in on him as a rookie, and now he's 29. And I'm like, what? They grow up so fast. Where's
they
the
do
time
grow
gone?
up. Yeah.
Um, but dude, I mean, it is what it is. If Trey Benson gets the workload, he's going to be amazing. I really do expect James Conner to be the guy, like almost, same level bell cow stuff, unless he gets injured. Because I feel like, Benson is the future plan and there's no need to rush him when you
Hmm.
have an established guy that's playing like James Conner's playing right now. So for this team, Marvin Harrison Jr., it is what it is. Insert Hall of Fame, first ballot, no problem. We'll see in X number of years for that ceremony. But it's about Trey McBride, dude. Like, what are we doing here? He was the tight end 7 last year, and it was a year, man. It was a crazy year for him. I know a lot of hope was lost when we went through those first 6 weeks, and he only had 16 targets, and Zach Ertz
Hmm.
had nearly 40 over that same time period. And then, Zach Ertz's season came to an end week 7. And then McBride just jumped up, dude. And like that first week, that next week, week 8, he was the tight end 1 against Baltimore. And it was like, okay, here we go. And Kyler gets back in at week 10, and he's leaning on McBride, dude. I'm calling him McBadass. You got to do what you got to do. And in those last 8 weeks, with Kyler, he was getting 8.25 targets per game, which is a number on a full game pace that would have been second amongst all tight ends right after Evan Ingram. And then it's going to happen every time. And then in a fantasy points per game, PPR style, he was 14.7, which is pretty incredible. And if that had gone full season, he would have beat Sam Laporta by 10 points
Hmm.
on the full math. So I don't know. It's just there's a lot of room for a lot of guys to have some success with that 200 targets available, but I don't think any of it's coming out of Trey McBride's work. Um, and the tight ends got 25% of the red zone targets. What 30? Yeah, 25% of the red zone targets last year. I think that number goes up. I honestly think that McBride's going to be the number one guy. I don't know what to say about him. I don't know what
Woohoo!
to say.
No, I'm with you. I mean, McBride after Marvin Harrison Jr., like you're saying, is the second best receiving option on the team. He led the team in targets last season, and that was without getting more than 3 targets through the first 5 weeks. So it was mostly, after the first 5 weeks that he got all this work. And like you said, after his injury, the points per game went way up. He was like fourth overall for tight ends in points per game in that period. So yeah, I see him having an awesome season. There's 163 targets up for grabs, like you said, with Hollywood Brown and Rondale Moore being gone and Zach Ertz. That's actually not even including Zach Ertz. That's just the wide receiver room. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. easily snatches up 130, 140, 150 of those. And then there's not a lot left for a third guy, but I'm with you. Michael Wilson makes a really good and interesting wide receiver 2 there. And then I think the wide receiver 3 spot is going to be a combination of Zay Jones and Greg Dortch. I think they like Greg Dortch's playmaking ability and his explosiveness. And so I think you're just going to see those two guys kind of like interchangeably come in and out, depending on what they want to do. But the primary workload is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., followed by Trey McBride, followed by Michael Wilson, and then probably the running back room, which I do think it's too early for Benson. Benson is kind of a project guy. I mean, we talked about his vision, or at least I talked about his vision issues coming out of college.
Yeah.
And I think some time behind a guy like James Conner would be good for him. James Conner and him are similar in some ways. They're bigger. They're both big, strong, powerful runners, but Benson's got a lot more explosion to his game and a lot more high-end speed. So learning from a guy like that in terms of how to run, how to read blocking, and how to um, be a consistent presence in the running game from a guy like James Conner is going to be really good for Trey Benson. And unless he gets hurt, and that is Conner, I don't see Benson really taking over because, like you were pointing out, James Conner's commanded at least around 200 touches for 3 straight years, if not more. If had he played more than 13 games, he would have been above, well above 200 touches in all of those seasons. So, and he was right around it. I think he had like 196 in one of them, and so he wasn't right at 200, and that's including rushing and um, receiving. So I see that happening again. Last season, James Conner had 208 carries, and the next closest running back was 58 with Amari DiMercato.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't even come along till late in the year. So they clearly do want a more solid presence at that RB2 spot. I could see Benson potentially getting like closer to 100 carries um to kind of balance James Conner out more, but that's not going to be enough in my opinion to make him fantasy viable, super fantasy viable this year. In deeper leagues, obviously you could go for it, and then like dynasty aspects, I think he going forward has a really good landing spot. But I do think Connor's got one more season of being like a top 15 to 20 running back.
I really hope so.
I think you're gonna get it out of him. And then yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know in terms of like all-time rookie stats where he's gonna land because of the offense that he's in. And I do like this offense. It's up and coming, but I don't think it's as good as say Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase or even the Rams and Puka Nacua last year. Um, I think they're finding their legs under Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
And so maybe you don't see him have 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns or anything crazy, but I think he's going to have an awesome rookie year and dominate where you want to see him dominate, which is going to be like targets, first read percentage, yards per route run, stuff like that. I think Marvin Harrison is going to be really, really good in. And maybe not so much of like the crazy, crazy numbers, but I could still see him having 1,000 yards and maybe even double-digit touchdowns. So,
Bring it on.
well,
Sounds
there.
fun.
Oh yeah, no, it does sound fun. I'm with you. I think the Cardinals are the most interesting team, the most fun team coming out of this division. And this is another division that didn't change too terribly much. But I do like the Cardinals and their viability as like a wild card potential. I mean, their defense needs some work, and but if that were to come along, this offense could certainly see them at least in the hunt for the playoffs towards the end of the year. Um, but that wraps us up on the NFC West. So we're going to continue this up. We're going to flip it back over to the AFC, and we're going to do the AFC East next week. So any Jets, Patriots, Bills, or Dolphins fans, please come join us next week. But until then, we've been Rough Draft Research. You've been the audience, and we'll see you next time.
Stay awesome.
I took a lease out on your heart.